Welcome to Michigan's WW1 Centennial News Report for July 2017, Fort Custer Centennial. I'm your host, Dennis Skupinski. The State Report. On June 21, 2017, SB 248, sponsored by State Senator Rebecca Warren, passed the legislative process and is awaiting Governor Rick Snyder's signature. This will create the WW1 Centennial Commission.
Start in Grass Lake, where a small group has dedicated themselves to preserving Michigan's military heritage. Michiganders are a proud and patriotic bunch. Men and women from every corner of our state have stepped forward to serve their country when called. We begin this episode of Destination Michigan with Steve Smith.
That's right, Matt. We go to Grass Lake for our first stop and meet with the dedicated folks at the Michigan Military Heritage Museum, where they're busy chronicling our patriotic legacy.
If you go to some of the other museums, what gets shown is limited. So it's going to be what they consider to be maybe the most important, or maybe based on a deed, or maybe based on more than just the overall historical context. If you come here, you're going to see the soldier that served in the Battle of the Bulge, regardless of what position or what medals he may have earned after the fact, that your neighbor, your grandparent, or uncle, there's a place for it here.
I'd say just about everything we have is unique because it's the story behind the artifact that makes it unique. You know, you go into a place, you see a bunch of uniforms. They're just uniforms, and then when you put a story behind that uniform, it really makes everything very unique.
The Michigan Military Heritage Museum is the creation of the Grass Lake Area Historical Connections. In large part, the thousands of artifacts on display come from individual donations. That includes a collection of 30 uniforms in a special exhibit commemorating the centennial of the United States entry into World War I. The exhibit is on loan from Dennis Skupinski of Ann Arbor.
We've got Italian soldiers, Austro-Hungarian, there's Russian, German, Belgium, French, Canadians, and Italians. And so when you see these uniforms, usually you see them in black and white on TV, and they just sort of are there, or you see black and white pictures. This, you get a chance to go up and actually see what they look like, from boots to helmets, and you can see the colors, and people ask, are these dress uniforms? And the answer is no, these are actually what they wore in combat. As far as combat uniforms go, there's probably no better collection in the United States as far as putting combat uniforms together from the different countries.
As you wander through the museum, other artifacts, uniforms, and their stories draw you in.
Just a reminder to check the latest events for Michigan's WW1 Centennial. Please go to ww1cc.org/Michigan. 1 century ago, July 1917. On July 1st and 2nd, race riots in East St. Louis, Illinois, killed a reported 40 to 200 people. July 2nd, 1917, the first regular convoy of merchant ships sails for Britain from Hampton Roads, Virginia. On July 6, 1917, T.E. Lawrence, a British Army officer known as Lawrence of Arabia, along with his Arab army, captures the port of Aqaba from the Ottoman Turks. On July 9, 1917, the HMS Vanguard, a British dreadnought, was destroyed by an internal explosion of cordite used to fire the shells. While at harbor at Scapa Flow, 843 sailors were lost. On July 10, 1917, Russian-born Jewish activist Emma Goldman was imprisoned for obstructing a draft. She was a well-known anarchist and was eventually deported to Russia. On July 17, 1917, the British royal family, headed by King George V, changed their surname from the German Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to the English Windsor. July 20, 1917, the first lottery for the draft was held. Number 258 was the first number drawn. July 21, 1917, socialist leader Alexander Kerensky becomes the Russian Prime Minister. On July 28, 1917, the British Tank Corps is officially established, replacing its predecessor, the heavy branch of the Machine Gun Corps. On July 28, 1917, in New York City, the Silent Parade or Silent Protest was organized by James Weldon Johnson. It organized between 8,000 to 10,000 African Americans who marched in New York City for the purpose of protesting lynching and anti-black violence. July 31, 1917, the Third Battle of Ypres begins, which became known as Passchendaele. The Battle of Passchendaele lasted until November 10, 1917. Camp Custer was one of the many National Army or Conscript Army training centers located in Battle Creek, Michigan. It was designed and built by civil engineer Samuel Arnold Greenlee and was designed to handle about 35,000 men at a time. Eventually, 100,000 men would be trained or demobilized through this camp. Construction began on July 1, 1917, and on December 5th, less than 6 months later, the complete camp was turned over to the government. About 8,000 men were used in the construction of Camp Custer. The material for the camp would fill a freight train 36 miles long. The total cost of the camp was $8 million. Camp Custer, the military city, had its own water system, sewer system, its own pavements, central heating plants, its own hospital, bakery, laundry, and all institutions that might go into a modern and sanitary city. And a paved road was built connecting it with Battle Creek. At its peak, Camp Custer held more than 60,000 soldiers-to-be. Young men poured into the camp from all over the Midwest, arriving by the Michigan Central or the Grand Trunk Railroads. When a selected man arrived at Camp Custer, he first goes to the Depot Brigade, where he receives a thorough medical examination and is given his uniform and equipment. He is then given a first military instructions and is later transferred to a special branch of service, the infantry, artillery, or some specialized branch of fighting. Camp Custer was called a national university that takes a young man from the farm, the shop, the office, and in a few short months graduates soldiers, trained and equipped, ready to fight the battles of democracy.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's ceremony. I'm Captain Mateo Chino, the Fort Custer HHD commander, and I'll be the master of ceremonies for today's event. Hosting today's ceremony is the Director of Military and Veterans Affairs and the Adjutant General for the Michigan National Guard, Major General Gregory Vadnais. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the entrance of the official party. I'd like to take a few moments to recognize the official party and distinguished guests joining us today for this historic occasion. Please hold all applause until the official party has been announced. Major General Gregory Vadnais, the Director of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs and the Adjutant General for the Michigan National Guard. Major General Michael Stone, the Assistant Adjutant General for Installations and the Commander, the 46th MP Brigade, MP Command. Senator Margaret O'Brien, Senator for Michigan's 20th State Senate District. Dr. Joe Schwartz, former U.S. Congressman of Michigan's 7th District and former mayor of Battle Creek. Colonel retired Jim Spackman, the president of the Fort Custer Historical Society. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Wilson, commander, Fort Custer Training Center. And Miss Kara Beer, the president of Battle Creek's Chamber of Commerce. Please give them a round of applause. Please rise as Sergeant Brigson from the 126th Army Band sings our national anthem and remain standing for the invocation given by Chaplain Brennan.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
God of time and eternity, ancient scripture tells us that for you, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. So what is 100 years? What is a single century but a blink in the history of the universe? And yet, let us consider what has happened in that blink. We've seen world powers rise and fall. We've danced at the brink of destruction, but also at the edges of the universe. We've witnessed the depths of evil, but also the heights of heroism. So as we celebrate Fort Custer's Centennial, as we consider the stories of this place, as we consider the stories of the men, the women, the families who have shaped and have been shaped by this place, and who in turn did their part to shape the world, teach us again, Lord, to number our days. Open our eyes to see our lives as part of this larger story, and help us to live each moment in a manner worthy of our high calling. Help us to know that what happens in just a blink can change the history of the world. Bless now our time of celebration with your grace, your wisdom, and the warmth of your enduring love. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Major General Gregory J. Vadnais and all of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines of the Battle Creek area, past and present, I welcome you to today's museum ribbon cutting and the Time Capsule dedication. On July 1st, 1917, exactly 100 years ago today, with the help of local government officials and the Battle Creek Chamber of Commerce, the United States War Department began the construction of Camp Custer in preparation for entering the Great War in Europe, World War I. Less than 6 months later, on December 5th, 1917, the complete camp was turned over to the government, a complete military installation of 10,000 acres, consisting of 2,000 buildings and comfortable quarters for 36,000 men stretching across 4 miles. After the first doughboys moved into the Camp Custer from the cities and towns of Michigan and Wisconsin to be molded into fighting men, during World War I, some 100,000 soldiers passed through Fort Custer. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Dempsey from the Historical Commission, Michigan Historical Commission, and Colonel Spackman from the Fort Custer Historical Society to come forward and stand on the side of the podium over here. Come on up, gentlemen. Yeah, right here. One on one side and one on the other side. Today, in recognition of Camp Custer's historical significance and the contributions during World War I, we unveil this historical marker provided by the Michigan Historical Society that will be displayed prominently near the museum entrance to be viewed by past and present and future generations. Mr. Dempsey and Colonel Spackman, would you please unveil the marker? Let's give them a round of applause. I'd like to invite Mr. Jack Dempsey just to say a couple words for his system.
Well, it's certainly an honor and a privilege to be here among so many Michiganders who love their history and their heritage as represented by this historical marker. As the grandson of a World War I Navy veteran, a young man who left Calumet, Michigan in the fall of 1917, I'm doubly honored. And so it's really tremendous to see all of you out here today to commemorate Michigan's history 100 years since Michigan entered the Great War, and to simply say two words, really expressing thanks to all of you, to the Michigan National Guard, to everyone who serves, those who are serving today, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time it's my pleasure to introduce the Director of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs and the Adjutant General for the Michigan National Guard, Major General Gregory Vadnais.
Wow, that's cool. That is awesome. Jack, Jim Spackman, thanks for all the tremendous amount of work that you all have done to produce this great placard and what we're doing here for the dedication of the museum. But I got to tell you, first of all, I got to talk about the weather. So we're having a conversation about what a great weather day it is, and Steve Wilson, the post commander, is giving credit to the chaplain. Carol from the Chamber of Commerce quickly corrected him that this is a great Chamber of Commerce. Kara, we're going to go with that. Okay? So you got it. We're going to give you honorable mention today. So a great day, and it is great seeing everyone, and it is another piece of history in Michigan, certainly in this installation. 100 years to the day. I mean, that's pretty incredible, and it is amazing, the rich history that this installation has. And talking briefly with Joe Schwartz, I know Joe's going to get up and talk a little bit, and he's got a better sense of the history than I do, but growing from 16,000 acres to the 7,400 acres that we are today, and talk a little bit about that rich history. So, and we all understand the amount of soldiers, units that have passed through here, and I'm particularly touched by the 32nd Infantry Division, which we are still part of the 32nd Infantry Brigade Combat Team today in Michigan. We just went back not a year ago, regained that affiliation with the 32nd, so we're really proud of that. The museum, the original idea for the museum, actually that conversation began in 1985, and the society stands up in 2008, really gets energized in 2011, and under Jim Spackman's leadership, we're all going to get an opportunity to get in there and see the great work that he and his team have done to pay recognition to that 100 years of history, and say thanks and recognize those that have trained and lived here and enjoyed the benefit of this great installation, which today is multi-component, multi-joint. We've got all the services either based here or training here, so a great installation it is. I also want to recognize, I know we got a number of reps from Consumers Energy that are here in their veterans community. We raise our hands. They're here someplace. They're out working, so they're going to explain the solar arrays that we've got out here and share some information. We got a number of organizations here and that you'll be able to visit with today. I do want to recognize, of course, we know Joe Schwartz, the godfather of the installation. You know, it's a good thing, Joe. Stick with me here, it's good. And of course, is going to share some thoughts with us. And Senator Margaret O'Brien, I just want to say again, Margaret, thanks for all the great support that you give the National Guard, the great work that she does in the state of Michigan. And I always say, you put your money where your mouth is. And under Margaret's leadership, I can tell you, the Michigan National Guard has been the beneficiary of a lot of financial support, frankly, that we needed. So Margaret, thank you. And you know, we've talked about Jack Dempsey, about Jim Spackman, the great work that they do. Thank you so much. Again, great to have everyone here. Looking forward to the Time Capsule and sending our message to those in the future. I understand there's a bottle of scotch in there that'll be 100-year-old scotch. Good. So, but again, thanks. Great to be here. Looking forward to the rest of the events. Thanks everybody for coming, and God bless you all, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Joe Schwartz.
I'm going to go over a bridge one day when I don't have to have this cane in my hand and throw it in the river. So it's a result of back surgery, I must say. I was raised on this military base. My dad came here in the early 1930s to start the Department of Psychiatry at the VA hospital. He was a World War I veteran. And so my first memories are of Fort Custer. My first memories are of the building that went on at the beginning, that's actually before the beginning of America's involvement in World War II, when many of these barracks were built. Riding my bike and with other kids who lived on the base around the fort. There was a place out in the woods. There was a mock European village out in the woods. We haven't quite figured out precisely where it was, but it was out there in the woods, and it was called Hitlerville. And it was for the infantrymen training here to go out and practice a little urban warfare of taking down German villages. And there was a lot of live ammunition on the ground. And when we got on our bikes and rode away, our mothers would tell us, go anywhere you want, but don't you dare go to Hitlerville. Well, you know where we went. I learned to swim in Eagle Lake. I can remember going back and forth to the Battle Creek schools every day from our home here in Fort Custer. My dad was reactivated in World War II, was a lieutenant colonel in the medical corps, stationed here. My mother, who was a World War I nurse, reactivated and was a nurse at Percy Jones Army Hospital and at the base hospital, which was right out here somewhere. You can't see the place anymore, but it was out here as well. So I'm a Fort Custer kid, and I'm very proud of that. This is a great, great piece of our history, not only of Battle Creek and Kalamazoo, but of the entire state of Michigan. And George Armstrong Custer was from Monroe, Michigan. So it is a great part of Michigan history. And I am very proud to have been, my birth took place not on the base, but close to, and have spent the first few years of my childhood until 1946 living on this base. I think I was, I don't want to tell you what I was in 1946, but I think I was a first grader, maybe a second grader. But in any event, this is a wonderful piece of history. It's wonderful that the Department of Defense, the state of Michigan, have decided to hang on to it. It's wonderful that the city of Battle Creek has put a 3,000-acre industrial park out here, the largest industrial park in Michigan. It's wonderful that the state has developed the Fort Custer recreation area here, and it's wonderful that the VA hospital still thrives. This is a great area. I want to thank all of you for being here, and I ask all of you to continue your really unbridled support for Fort Custer and everything they do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A museum is an institution that tells the story of men and women the world over and how humanity has survived in its environment over the years. It houses things created by nature and by man. And in our modern society, it houses the cultural soul of the nation. One of the fundamental objectives of a museum is to educate, to enrich the educational process by exposing the public to this history in a positive way. It also helps our future generations to understand and appreciate their history and the culture and take pride in the achievements of their forebears. Today we recognize 100 years of Fort Custer. This museum tells the story of the soldiers that once walked the soil and how they too survived in their environment over the last 100 years. The museum houses things created, worn, and used by them, and it too houses the cultural soul of the time. The museum before us today is a living time capsule which holds the cultural wealth of Fort Custer, all in trust to educate and assist future generations of soldiers to understand and appreciate their history and to add to it. At this time, I invite the official party to please stand up for the ribbon cutting. Dedicating the last 100 years of service to the state and the nation, on this date, July 1st, 2017, we officially open the Fort Custer Museum. You may cut the ribbon. You may now be seated. It was composed in 1917 by Vernon T. Stevens, the Camp Custer Music Company. A deep dive into the online world and search of Wikipedia resulted in no results in Vernon Stevens or anything about him, except the music he left behind that tells a story of the time. At this time, I'd like to invite Bootleg up to perform We Were Custer Soldiers and KP Today.
In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and found for us a land we call our own. And since that great old day when they named it USA, men from every nation called it home. In times of strife and need, we have shown by act and deed that we're loyal to the old red, white, and blue. And so if fight we must for a cause we know that's just, we'll show them what a soldier boy can do. For we're Camp Custer's fighting soldier boys, we're Yankee Doodle-Doo. And when we're out of fighting in that foreign land, there is going to be a hot time raised by Uncle Sam. salmon, we will give them all they want, boys, till the Kaiser has to roll. And when we lick the Hun, our duty will be done, and we'll all go marching home. In days of yore when we needed aid, our soldier boys were not afraid and gave their lives to keep this land our own. And now to this great land comes a cry to lend a hand, to help to throw a tyrant from his throne. So as the boys of old, we shall show by acts so bold that we're loyal to the old red, white, and blue. And so with fight we must, for a cause we know that's just. We'll show them what a soldier boy can do. For we're Camp Custer's fighting soldier boys. We're Yankee Doodle-Doos. And when we start a fighting in that foreign land, there is going to be a hot time raised by Uncle Sam, and we will give them all they want, boys, till the Kaiser has to roll. And when we lick the Hun, our duty will be done, and we'll all come marching home. America, my home.
Glorious parts of serving in this military.
When the Great War started over there, and they told the Kaiser to beware, they sent me off to camp with all the fellas, wearing metal caps that looked like small umbrellas. But when I hit Paris with my gun and my new duds, they sat me down in front of 30 million tons of spuds. KP, KP, this is surely not the life for me. Mademoiselle from Armentières will have nothing more to fear if they never put me near KP, KP, KP. Taters look like little zeppelins to me. They say that war is rough, but I'm sitting on my duff, and I've surely had enough. KP, KP, KP. I appeal until I'm having to run again. It's not worth it on what they pay me. It's not for me. Wanna fight a Hun, but the spots are never done. Never had begun. KLMNOB, KP, KP, as I fight for freedom and democracy. I'm in the army now, I'm not behind the plow, but it's all the same somehow, you see. KP, KP, KP. It's bizarre to fight a war this way. Gee, I hope we win the thing. Some mademoiselle from Armentières, Polly, move me out of here. Send me home today.
Well, very, very much. That was great. I would also like to add that one of the performers is Sergeant First Class Adam Swager. He's a ready NCO from the 126th Press Camp headquarters. Please give them another round of applause. This marks the last century of Fort Custer. We now switch from the past to the present. I'd ask the official party to please stand up and lead us to this display pad. As the official party leaves and exits the tent, I would also ask all here in the tent to also follow us there as well.
Invite Major General Dabney, Major General Stone, Senator O'Brien, Colonel Spackman, Lieutenant Colonel Wilson, and Miss Cara Beer, and Dr. Joe Schwartz to the Time Capsule in the center of the Pentagon. Ladies and gentlemen, today Fort Custer Training Center is not only celebrating its past, but also the present while looking towards the future. As the first shovel was put in the ground 100 years ago today, we once again put a shovel in the ground to leave a gift from today to the custodians of the garrison on July 1st, 2117. For what we say and what we leave 100 years from now, only they will see. Official party at this time, please charge your shovel with dirt and place it around and on the time capsule. Let's give them a round of applause.